my view actually is not only are hadith in general unreliable, I would actually say that hadith are unusually reliable. Like, I think that the list of problems with hadith is kind of staggering. And I think that hadith are actually much less reliable than other kinds of historical sources. And that has to do with the specific sort of conditions in which they emerged and the specific regime of pressures in which they were operating. But yeah, I think not only is it not true, but it's like radically false, actually, this idea that hadith are the most reliable. I actually think that hadith are unusually unreliable. To put it another way, if you had a series of like a dial and you could turn it up to like more problems or less problems, right? Hadith almost have every dial turned up to max. The only thing that could maybe make the situation worse, I mean, I'm sure there are several things, but one thing would be like if there was a much longer time gap. But absent that, like, if pretty much any other problem you can think of, we have with hadith. So I actually think that hadith are unusually unreliable, actually. The proper hadith critics, people like al-Bukhari, they relied upon corroboration, i.e. corroborating isnads to try and determine that someone was reliable. The problem is for earlier people from before the hadith critics were operating, so back into the 8th century and 7th century, there's ample time for false corroboration to arise. There are all these pressures, incentivizing or producing parallel and alternative isnads for hadiths, which means that all this false corroboration is just proliferating up until the time of the hadith critics. So the metric that they were using, someone is normally corroborated. When they transmit something, you can find a parallel version of the same hadith, other people have it. This is not going to work for the early period because of this confounding factor of the creation of false parallel transmissions. So the thing that they're relying upon to determine reliability is not actually going to be principle. Is that they have no response to. Sorry, go on. Keep going.
Yeah, that's a great place to end this, is that basically what you're saying is that at some point in time, hadith sciences did get precise, but the horse had already left the barn. So it's the early period of hadith that's problematic, and that's pretty much impossible to overcome at this point in time. And that's the problem. So the early period, there was all this paraphrastic, atomistic transmission, along with drastic shifts in the meaning. You don't have that corroboration. You don't have the same standards. In the early period, you don't even have isnads that are being called. Then later on, that those are back projected. You have the raising issue. So I think we could sum up with the horse left the barn. That's the problem, it seems to me, ultimately. And then the proof is also, the proof is also in the pudding when you analyze the genre, and you can look at the Sahih books as well. You just compare it to the Quran, you'll see the historical anachronisms and all these issues. So it's not just theoretical, but we can see it in the fruits as well, that the product itself,
Now to bring it all into basically one single point. Any given hadith, this is the consensus as far as I can tell. This is the common view now among secular critical scholars. Any given hadith should be presumed to be unreliable or distorted or otherwise suspect until the contrary can be demonstrated. That basic skeptical principle is universal. And this is the basic point. So it's not that we can't use hadith. It's not that we can't reach back into earlier Islamic history. There are ways, there are some methods, but in general, skepticism, a high degree of skepticism, is warranted with hadith. There are a lot of serious problems.